Hi, I'm Mike Donahue.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Sponheimer.
Hi, I'm Olga Petsa.
Hey, this is Zelda Adams, one of the filmmakers of Where the Devil Roams.
Hi, I'm Steve J. Adams.
And I'm Sean Horler, and we're the directors of Satan Wants You.
The director of Troy, and you're listening to...
Director, writer, and lead actor of Wild Goat Surf, and you're listening to...
Star of I Used to Be Funny, and you are listening to...
And you're listening to Contra Zoom.
Contra Zoom.
Contra Zoom.
Contra Zoom.
And you're listening to Contra Zoom.
Yeah.
This is Contra Zoom,
where we go back and forth about film.
I'm Dakota Arsenault.
And I'm Rachel Ho.
It's finally that time of year again. No, not time to do a spring movie preview or cover South by Southwest or something else timely. It's time for us to name our favorite movies from the last year. If you are a long-term listener, you know the drill, but if you are new, the way this works is it all started back in 2016. The show is almost a year old, and we decided to wait until after the Oscars to name the best films previously, as it could take several months to finally catch up with all the end-of-the-year award releases. Then it just continued year in and year out to have the show happen after award season was done. While both Rachel and myself have top 10 lists that have appeared elsewhere, we have our final list ready to go. And then helping us along the way is a whole bunch of friends who have sent in voicemails naming their favorite movie of the year as well. Before we begin, I'd love to maybe shout out a couple films that I didn't see, so that way no one is wondering why I skipped them. And then at the very end of the show, we'll name some honorable mentions as well. So these are some movies that I didn't get the chance to see that have been on my watch list, and based on, critical reception and the way it performed and all that sort of stuff, were movies that, might have been up my alley and could have been in contention. So, I'm not going to name something like John Wick 4 while I haven't seen number 3 or 4. I like the first two, but I didn't love them enough. I know a lot of people really love John Wick. Rachel, you included.
My God.
I know.
We haven't even started. What is happening?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of maybe subtle shade thrown through this episode. But some of my misses include the Michael Mann film Ferrari, the British romantic comedy Rye Lane, the other British, not romantic or comedy, How to Have Sex, from Molly Manning Walker, Passages, the Ira Sachs film, and The Taste of Things, which was France's official selection at the Oscars, and not I'm blanking on what was the big one that everyone wanted. It's probably on my list too this year.
Anatomy of a Fall?
Pardon me, sorry?
Anatomy of a Fall?
Thank you. Anatomy of a Fall. Yeah, a movie.
The Oscar winner, Anatomy of a Fall?
Wow.
Yes,
yeah.
okay.
Oh, man. Brain already melting. And we haven't even started yet. Thank you. Yes, Anatomy of a Fall. It was France's submission over Anatomy of a Fall, and it did not end up making the cut for Best International Film. Rachel, I did not ask you beforehand, but were there any movies that you can remember off the top of your head that you did not get the chance to see that, based on your taste and, its critical reception, might have been in contention?
Also, a big one for me was The Teacher's Lounge. I never ended up getting around to watching it. Mm-hmm. And I know you loved it. And that was one of the reasons why I've been meaning to watch it. And I still will watch it. I think I will still go ahead and watch it. But everything about it sounds pretty amazing. Have you watched Solo?
Yes, I did. The Canadian film you're talking about, right? Not the Han Solo spinoff from several years ago, where my mind immediately went. I liked it. I didn't love it.
Okay. So I thought that would be one. But I think all of those movies that you listed that you didn't see, I actually think you'd really like How to Have Sex.
Yeah.
I think you'd like it because it reminds me of well, maybe okay, this is gonna sound mean, but it reminds me of Sofia Coppola, but like more my style of what I would like for Sofia Coppola to be. And I loved it. I thought it's got that kind of vibe to it, but it's a very, very good movie. I think you'd enjoy it.
Yeah, it was one where
I'm sure you'll watch it.
It was playing at VIF, and my schedule didn't line up to be able to see it. And then I got an email about a screener for review purposes and didn't have the time to request it. So I was like, I'll catch it later. And then, getting the email being like, it's now on Mubi. You can watch it whenever. It's like,
yeah,
yep, I'll watch it whenever.
No, it's good. It's a very, very good one. I think Taste of Things is definitely going to be straight up. Like you'll very much so enjoy that one. I think you'll really, really love it. For just, I watched it with a couple people, and one comment that came away was like, the director's doing too much, as in like the director was showing off. But my thinking is, if I could direct that way, if I could do a scene like that, yeah, I do the same thing.
Right?
It's very good. It's very good.
Yeah.
It looks very beautiful. Like it's an incredible. Yeah, I think I think of all the films that you mentioned, those are the two that I think that in particular, I think you'd really like.
Good to know. I did, as according to my Letterboxd list, watch 113 releases from last year. I know you don't keep track, but it was probably even more than I did, because festivals are a great way to pile up a lot of movies very quickly, and you covered a lot of festivals last year.
Covered a lot of festivals, but I have to say I actually think I might have watched more movies like the year before.
Okay.
Because I did do a number of festivals, but even those, like when I mean, this is me comparing it to other people though, where everyone's like, they come away from TIFF saying they watched like 50 some odd movies. And I'm like, oh, I only watched 20, but 20 is still a lot.
It's a lot.
But these people make you feel like you've watched nothing. But no, I think, I have no idea. I genuinely have absolutely no idea how many films I watched last year. But even just amongst new releases, like I kept on top of it pretty well last year.
Yeah. Overall, I have to say it was a very, very stacked year. Like if we could have made this a top 20 show, I would have been thrilled, but that would be a 5-hour episode. There's just so many good movies last year.
I completely agree. And I wasn't a huge fan of 2022. I didn't think that year was particularly strong, even though there were some movies that year that I absolutely adored. But I didn't think as a whole the movie, like the film industry, was that strong. And I think that, there are a bunch of reasons for it, but I think now, like, COVID is no longer an excuse anymore. I don't think, like, you can't say things happen. Obviously the strike happened last year, and that impacted things quite a bit. But I think in terms of saying like quality and budgets and things like that kind of stuff, I believe, in my opinion anyways, I think all of that, the COVID kind of excuse is done, for good, not as in like they stopped making an excuse. I just don't think it's a factor anymore. And I think that now productions have kind of resumed as usual. And we're seeing that, like we're seeing just really, really great movies again. And it's very nice. Like it's nice. The theaters are like they're a little more crowded than they used to be. And I think people are generally excited about film again, which is nice.
Yeah, I agree. I think the strikes are going to have more of an impact on film for this year because things are only just getting back underway. Especially TV, I think is going to be a little weird this year. But we'll sort of see. It might be COVID light year. Like 2021 was a really off year for movies because that was when we really felt the delays and stuff that got shut down and pushed back. And so I think this year is going to be sort of similar to that. Not to the extreme, but a little bit.
You know what I think of? Dune 2 was probably the biggest movie last year that got pushed because of the strikes. But I wonder if they had actually released in the same year, like, I don't know how the Oscars would have gone this year then.
Dune 2 versus Oppenheimer?
That would have been massive. Yeah. It would have been crazy because, I don't know, everyone, like universally, I think Dune 2, everyone agrees it's a gorgeously done film and it's really well made. But then Oppenheimer obviously is Oppenheimer. But yeah, I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, imagine if Dune had actually released when it was meant to. They would have just gone, it would have been a real bloodbath. Yeah. An Oscars bloodbath, which is not a real bloodbath.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well then, we're going to get into our top 10. As I said, we got a bunch of voicemails that we're going to be playing of other people who are going to name their favorite film of the year. We have a couple overlaps. We'll do our best to kind of not tip our hand of what those overlaps are. So maybe some of our replies are going to be a little short as far as feedback on what we think of the other person's pick, but we'll try to give a proper discussion to every film as best as we can, as we are also trying to move through at a, I don't want to call it a quick pace because we want to make sure we're giving the time of day, but at a reasonable, respectable pace.
A brisk pace.
A brisk pace. So I think the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with a couple voicemails. We actually got 2 voicemails, one from Michael Clawson and another one from Eric Zhu. They both named the same movie as their number 1. So I figured we're going to listen to back-to-back voicemails because I loved May December, but it unfortunately did not make my list. I don't know your thoughts of it. Maybe I'll hear your thoughts on it in a second, but it did not make either of our lists. So take it away, Michael, and then Eric.
Hey, Dakota and Rachel, this is Michael Clawson from Drinkin' the Movies, calling in from Seattle, Washington with my number 1 movie of 2023, which was Todd Haynes' May December. Todd Haynes is one of my favorite filmmakers, and for me, this movie only further cements Haynes as one of the great filmmakers working today. I love how densely layered this narrative is, with its interweaving themes of celebrity, performance, and exploitation, and I'm blown away by the tonal complexity of it, and how single scenes can be both funny and shatteringly tragic at the same time. Thanks for the invitation to share my number 1. Hope you guys are both doing well, and looking forward to hearing your picks. Bye.
Hi ContraZoom Pod, this is Eric from The Insert. Thank you so much for having me on to talk about my favorite film from 2023, Todd Haynes' May December. In May December, Haynes turns his eyes towards the constructed surfaces of the Atherton Yu family. Playing on soap opera, true crime docs, European art cinema, and the Mary Kay Letourneau tabloid scandal, May December is simultaneously a campy melodrama and the year's most tragic horror film, as it follows characters struggling to find easy, coherent answers to their pain. What's so moving to me about May December is the feeling that it, like its characters, is desperately trying to make sense of itself, grasping for truth and finding nothing. It's a film that's knowingly doing too much, filled with interpretive dead ends that collectively point to a void of understanding. Meanwhile, the film's drastic tonal and formal shifts bring its characters' pain to the forefront. It's miraculous that Haynes pulls off such an elusive conceptual film that actually foregrounds its humanity.
So, Rachel, as I said, May December did not make your list. Was it a movie that you liked? Was it a movie that didn't work for you? Was it a movie you missed?
I watched it. I did.
I can always tell your feelings based on your size.
It's like, it's fine. I get it. I understand why people like it so much. I really do. I understand why it got nominated for all that it did. It just, I don't know what it is about it. A lot of that movie just made me feel, even before it came out, actually, so this might have been the problem. I just didn't know why anyone was doing this movie, because I thought, there's a guy out there, that is his life, right? And I know that eventually afterwards it came out that he wasn't very happy with the fact that the movie had been made. But to me, it was like, this guy hasn't been in the news for 20 some odd years at this point. Maybe we're getting closer to 30 years where his name has not been mentioned anymore. And I'm sure he's just living his own life with his kids and doing his own thing. And not just him, but like his children as well. Like that, the whole lot of it. And it made me feel really uncomfortable with the fact that now this movie's coming out that I understand is not necessarily directly about it. And it's about an actress doing this, but it just felt very like Hollywood having such a hard-on for being important, like trying to show the self-importance of this industry, even though I know that the movie is kind of taking a swipe at that idea as well. But the entire existence of the movie, to me, kind of goes against the swipe that Todd Haynes is trying to make in the film. So I just didn't sit well with me. I thought the performances were good though, and I'm finally turned around on Charles Melton. For the while, I was like, I don't really understand why everyone's making such a big deal out of him, but I get it. Like, I'm on board with Charles Melton now.
Fair enough. Well, then, how about you talk about a movie you did really like?
So my number 10 is Creed 3. So I know after like taking down a film that is like very, very prestige and then going to something like Creed 3, my it doesn't look great. But the thing is, I really love Michael B. Jordan. I think he is a really fun actor and someone that I've really enjoyed watching him. I feel like we've all been watching him since we were like little, even if we didn't realize we were watching Michael B. Jordan. And this was his directorial debut. So I was really excited to see that because I think what he's done with the Creed franchise is unexpected. I don't think anybody thought that a spinoff from Rocky would do any good. But the first one was absolutely fantastic. The second one I don't think is as good, but it's still a lot of fun. And then the third one, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot of fun. I thought seeing Jordan kind of work his way around how to be a director, and like for someone that's been in the industry as long as he has, I find it really fascinating to watch what comes out of him as a director, because he's had so much experience with a vast array of directors and also on television and in film. And so I love this idea of like a younger actor. I guess he's not young anymore. He's my age, but of like taking a bit of ownership into his career and like taking that step. So I thought it was a lot of fun. I don't think it made like a massive wave last year in terms of box office or critical acclaim, but it was one that I ended up rewatching quite a bit later on in the year.
Yeah, I watched the first Creed, absolutely loved it. The second Creed came out and it just, I missed it in theaters and people weren't as high on. They're like, it's a bit of a step down. And like Creed 3, I know got pretty good reviews. And it was just one of those things. I know you were a big fan of it where, because I haven't seen the second one yet, I can't watch the third one yet. And I don't really have interest in watching the second one.
It's not that kind of movie. I don't like these movies. Maybe. I don't know. It's not like you really need to watch all of them. I know what you mean though. You want to be complete going into it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to talk about my number 10 film, and that is The Royal Hotel, directed by Kitty Green. I saw this back at VIFF last fall, and I was a very big fan of her first film, The Assistant. I don't even know if it was her first film. I think she did some documentaries before that. But I really liked The Assistant, which was sort of like this take on what it was like being an assistant for someone like a Harvey Weinstein. And this, the way women have to face such an uphill battle to get ahead in the film industry. And it could be for any industry at all, but specifically the film industry where it's so ego driven. And so I really loved it. It was very dark, very scary because of the reality of the horrors of it all. And then the Royal Hotel comes around and it's sort of similar where if you aren't really familiar with it, it's once again stars Julia Garner, and this time also with Jessica Henwick, and they're two Americans who are backpacking through Australia, run out of money, and so they have to quickly find work, and the only work that's available is working at this bar in the middle of nowhere where I think it's like there's like an oil rig or a mine nearby, and so the only clientele are all of these male oil workers, whatever they are, and how rowdy they get with Australian drinking culture. And there's literally nowhere else to go. And they're like the only women in this area, except for like the owner, is Hugo Weaving, and his wife, who's, they're a much older couple. So they, two pretty young girls come in with a bunch of drunk, inappropriate men, and how that kind of plays out. And I was watching it, and after watching The Assistant, I was pretty shocked, considering the subject matter, how often I was actually laughing at moments in the movie. And after it was over, I was like, that movie was actually kind of funny. And it ends in a much more cinematic way than The Assistant ends at, where The Assistant ends where it's just like, damn, she's got some hard decisions she needs to make about what she wants to do with the rest of her life and how she wants to proceed. And then with the Royal Hotel, it's like, hell yeah, I love movies, sort of thing. I know this movie wasn't a lot of people's cup of tea. Did you care for this one, Rachel?
Not really.
Yeah.
It's fine. Like I again, it's one of those that like I do. The one movies that like there's some movies that come out and then people love them and I just don't understand the love for them. But this is one that it feels like the kind of a sleeper indie hit. Like it was one that I think it did find its audience, because those who love it, or sorry, those who like it, I think that they really, really like it. But it is oddly niche. I don't even know what makes it niche though. But it's definitely an interesting movie. I respect it, but I didn't really care for it that much.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know. I feel like The Assistant definitely had a bit more of a, cult following after it, but this one, I feel like it kind of, the buzz behind it died fairly quickly.
Very quickly. And I think like The Assistant had obviously going for it. Like it was very topical at the time when it came out. And there was another movie that came out alongside The Assistant.
There was like Never Rarely, Sometimes
Always.
Called?
Is that it? What was the one with Margot Robbie? And
you're talking about the Fox News one.
Yeah. Was that the same year as The Assistant?
It might have been. I can't believe I'm forgetting what this movie is called. I'm pulling it up right now.
I just remember, I feel like The Assistant came out with another film that was not similar to it at all, but just like the topic was the same.
Yeah, it was called Bombshell, and yeah, it was the same year. Yeah.
So I feel like The Assistant ended up being this kind of, if you didn't, because I don't think Bombshell was that great. I don't think it did what they thought it was going to do. But then in talking about that movie, a lot of people went, well, actually, if you want to see a more interesting film, a more nuanced film about this topic, here's The Assistant. For me, I think with The Royal Hotel, it's not the same topic at all as The Assistant, but it has similar themes. And I kind of was like, you did this better in The Assistant.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, either do it better or do it differently or do something completely different. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that was, I think, a bit of a, I don't want to call it a failing, but that was something for me that didn't quite work. Because I think I had The Assistant in the back of my head, which is a really, really great movie.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, well, let's listen to our next voicemail, and that is from Jeff Bulmer from Classic Movies Live, who is basically going to give a really good segue into the your next pick. So let's hear from Jeff, and then we'll throw it over to you, Rachel.
Hi, this is Jeff from Classic Movies Live. Around this time last year, Matt Johnson premiered one of the best Canadian movies I've ever seen about maybe the most important failure ever to come out of our country, BlackBerry. I can say it's one of the best Canadian movies I've ever seen, too, because BlackBerry is one of the best movies I've ever seen, period. Featuring Jay Baruchel and Glenn Howerton in the best roles of their careers, BlackBerry perfectly captures so many things. The feeling of working in a tech startup, the uneasy balance between ambition, perfectionism, and obsession, and maybe most importantly, the pride in being Canadian, and being from a city that no one really thinks about that much. When it came out, I was so blown away by the film that I saw it twice in theaters during release weekend, and it hasn't left my mind since. And in addition to being the most nominated film ever at the Canadian Screen Awards this year, BlackBerry recently released as a miniseries on CBC Gem in a re-edited format that adds even more depth to truly undersung Canadian heroes Mike Lazaridis, Doug Freegan, and Jim Balsillie. Jim Balsillie, the guy everyone is going to attribute this quote to from now on.
I'm from Waterloo, where the vampires hang out!
Thanks, Jeff, for that. No, sorry, we didn't actually listen to it while we were recording. But so BlackBerry is my number 9 pick. Super Canadian, super funny in a Canadian way, and I just love the kind of narrative around it of saying like there's this big thing that changed the world. Like, to say something changed the world is usually very hyperbolic, but BlackBerry literally did change the world. Like the way that we operate, the way everything good and bad with the world today, you could almost directly kind of correlate it to the BlackBerry, because that just changed the way that we interact with one another, changed the way we work. It changed the way that we bide our time in terms of entertainment, things like that. And so the idea that they were going to make a movie about it in a year where there were so many movies about things. Like they had that stupid Cheetos movie, Beanie Babies, Nike had one. I'm missing Tetris had one. Am I missing any other ones?
I think there's several others. Yeah,
there were a lot. Like, and there's more to come. Like, there's going to be one about Pop-Tarts this year. Like, that genre was really grating on me because I'm like, yeah, we get it. Like, some products have an interesting backstory, but BlackBerry for me was the one that really stood out as being, along with Air. I think Air was okay, like as being a step above everything else and being. It truly got to the heart of why it changed the world, but also the kind of the struggle that went on behind it, all of the stuff that the machinations behind getting something like the BlackBerry going, and then how ego and human and how that affects, the brand itself and eventually causes the downfall of this tech giant in Canada. And another thing that I thought was funny was a lot of people didn't realize BlackBerry was Canadian. Like, a lot of Canadians didn't realize it was Canadian, which I didn't know. I thought that it was a very well-known thing that it came out of Waterloo. But and then on top of that, you have Glenn Howerton, who's really great. He's really funny in it. Jay Baruchel, Matt Johnson. Everyone does such a great job with it. And it's one of those films. I remember after we watched it, I don't know if actually, whatever. After we watched it, another one of the film critics turned to me and was like, so I guess this is going to be like what wins Best Canadian Film for the TFCA. And sure enough, it did win Best Canadian Film because it was the best movie. And it was very clear that it was going to be the best movie of the year.
Well, the Canadian Screen Awards have not happened yet, actually. It doesn't happen till the end of May. So it's not been officially crowned the best Canadian film.
We were talking about the Toronto Film Critics Awards.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, the award. Yeah, so step
Your
step
fancy
back
pants
for a
group.
second, Dakota, here. Step back. So because there is a Rogers sponsors like a massive award. It used to be considered the biggest monetary award for film in Canada. It was like $100K from Rogers, but then they split it into two. Actually, now there's a documentary one and a narrative one, but we all kind of figured BlackBerry was going to win. And then I'll say a funny thing was a new category that got introduced this year for the Critics Awards was Best Performance in a Canadian Film, and Glenn Howerton won it, who is American. And it was very funny. He sent in like a little video clip of it, and he was like, "I'm American." Like, what's going on?
Yeah,
but I always say it's the best performance, so that is what it is.
Yeah. It was easily the best of the corporate biopics. And I like the fact that so many came out in one year. What a weird trend to happen all at once. Normally you'll like see something where maybe 2 or 3 come out in a year of a trend. And then like the next year, there'll be like a whole explosion of them. Yeah. This sort of came out of nowhere and it was just like all at once. Here's 10 in 1 year. It's like, where the hell did this come from? Why did every brand decide to, sign their rights to make a movie all at the same time?
And then also, too, some of them were like not interesting.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think we needed to know why, the spicy Cheeto. Is it called spicy Cheetos or hot Cheetos or something like that? Flamin' Hot. Like, I don't know if we needed a story on that. Beanie Babies, I was very disappointing because I actually thought that could have been interesting. Oh, there was one about pinball.
Right. There was I missed that one.
Pinball.
Yeah.
There was one about pinball. And then, so next year I know Pop-Tarts is getting one. I heard Nokia is getting one as well. Anyone else? I don't know. I'm waiting for the other shoe brands to kind of get on. Oh, Ferrari. Ferrari, I guess technically because it's brand.
But that wasn't really about.
Yeah, no, it's not about the formation of the brand. Which might have been a better movie. But so I don't know if like Adidas and Puma, maybe because that's interesting. The Adidas and Puma
because they split because they were the same company.
Yeah, they were, I think, brothers, no?
Yeah.
They were 2 brothers who were there.
They were.
Yeah. There we go. Why aren't they making that movie?
Right?
Messing around with Pop-Tarts for. Why do we need a movie about Pop-Tarts?
I don't know. Ask Jerry Seinfeld.
I'm curious. I will watch it. I am part of the problem. Like, I am going to watch it. Because I love Pop-Tarts. So I'm
glad you recognize your own faults there, Rachel.
Yeah, it is.
All right, I'm going to go into my number 9 movie, and that is Evil Does Not Exist, the Ryusuke Hamaguchi film. I had never seen any of his movies until Drive My Car a couple years ago, and absolutely blown away by that one. And like, I know it's, a super long movie, and it's very leisurely paced, I will call it. I'm not going to call it slow. It was leisurely paced with not a lot of dialogue, not a lot of action, all that sort of stuff. And it was just absolutely gripping and breathtaking. And so now I'm fully on the Hamaguchi bandwagon and was very excited that I got to see Evil Does Not Exist. And once again, it's much shorter. Thankfully, it's much shorter. Not that the length of driving my car was an issue, but I think this comes like just under 2 hours or about 2 hours. And it's still leisurely paced. You know, there's a good, 10-minute portion of us just watching a guy chop wood, and it is the most magnificent wood chopping you've ever seen in your life. And very slowly, we slowly explore this world of, how these outsiders in Tokyo want to build a glamping site in this rural area and how it's going to have an effect on the ecosystem there. And very slowly, before you know it, it kind of turns into a bit of a thriller. And then it gets, at the very end, has I don't want to call it a twist, but like it very much is okay, what does this mean that just happened? And you leave the theater and all you want to do is talk about what does it mean. And there's very rarely do we get movies like that, where it's a sort of ambiguous ending, but you sort of also understand what's going on, but you know that there's artistic intention behind it, and you just want to talk what it means. And I saw this, it was also during VIFF, and, my wife was with me and she saw it. And so we came out right away, we're talking about it, and there's a couple other people who were like, what does it all mean? And we're all just sort of buzzing with excitement about it. The movie's now about to come out in theaters, so a lot more people are going to see it, and I'm very excited for more people to catch us, because I know people are very excited about it after Drive My Car. And they just released a new poster, and it's absolutely incredible. Very, very happy, and such a big fan of this movie. What about you, Rachel?
I liked it. I really did like this one. I think we're going to do honorable mentions later. Had you not mentioned it, I would have put it in my honorable mention. I think it's incredible for all the reasons you just said. I think it's a stunning film. It's so different to Drive My Car, and I love that. Like, I love that you talked about the runtime of the film, but it's also just like the pacing, like you said. It's very leisurely paced in Drive My Car. And I think that this movie it's not quick, but it takes on more of I don't want to say a thriller thing, because that makes it sound a bit different to actually what it is, but that twist thingy that you're talking about at the end, like that ambiguous ending of getting people talk, whereas I feel like Drive My Car, people left it and you were left with a mood, you were left with a feeling about that film, whereas Evil Does Not Exist, you wanted to talk to people about it because you wanted to discuss theories. And I think that that's such a cool way of like having two films, one that had such a massive profile around the world, and not doing something similar, like going a little bit off track for that. So I really loved it for that.
Yeah. So I'm excited to hear what other people's reactions. I'm seeing so much buzz from people who are like, I finally get to see this, so I'm very excited about it.
It's nice that it's getting a theatrical release in North America. Like these types of films, foreign films in general don't really aren't huge on getting theatrical release in North America, especially if they're not European. So it's pretty cool.
Well, I think that, that's just the Drive My Car buzz. The fact that won Best International Film at the Oscars, and so many people were so high on it, that there's clearly an audience for his work over here, especially considering it's not your, a typical Hollywood film at all.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all. In the best possible way.
Yeah. All right, let us move on to your number 8 pick there, Rachel.
Which is a very typical Hollywood film, but in the best possible way. So my number 8 pick is The Holdovers, which is Alexander Payne's new movie, or not new movie anymore, his latest film. Has Paul Giamatti in it, and Divine Joy Randolph. She won the supporting actress at every single awards show that she was nominated in. This is the movie that I could recommend it to anybody. Anytime someone, still right now, I think I just recommended it to somebody 2 days ago. If you're just looking for something to watch and you just want like a nice feeling film, to me, I don't know anybody who would come away from The Holdovers being like, that was terrible, or like that. Like, to me, it's such a universal pleasing film, and usually universally praised films are not necessarily the best ones because you're trying so hard to appease everybody. But The Holdovers does it in a way that it's just, you come away feeling very content and it's a very pleasant film. And I personally was a little bit surprised that it got as much awards buzz that it did, because it didn't feel like that kind of movie, in my opinion. Like, it didn't feel like an awards movie, whatever that might mean. But it's certainly a good movie. Like, it's a well-made movie. It's a well-performed movie. I think the direction of it in terms of setting it in the 70s, one of the people who wrote a small kind of review for it for Exclaim, she wrote, there are people who would watch this and might be mistaken that it's not actually a movie made in the 70s, because it does, the set deck, everything about it. Like, Payne really got the vibe of the 70s kind of boarding school in America quite well. So yeah, for me, it's such a feel-good film, the definition of a feel-good movie, and one that I have no problems recommending to anybody. And there's not very many movies that I think fall in that category.
Yeah. You've been a big proponent of this one, especially with its era feel to it, which, I think a lot of people really gravitate to. This is a movie I really loved as well, and sort of just missed my cut as well. I think it's in my... Where do I have it ranked? And it's in my top 20 for sure. It's in my number 16 film. Yeah, it was a movie I really enjoyed all the performances, and I'm really happy that Davine Joy Randolph won supporting actress, especially considering I felt that she was snubbed several years ago for Dolomite Is My Name, where she should have been nominated for that. So glad she finally got her recognition and won her award. This is just a great movie overall, and very happy it made your list.
I'll also say Dominic Sessa, who plays the school, like the school kid, he's really good. And this was his very first role, like his first performance. And I think who knows what he's going to do, but he really kind of joins like Timmy Chalamet in the super pale, kind of awkward brunette kid that's out there. And I'm in for it. I'm into it. I think he's such a good actor. And it was kind of incredible to me that this was his first proper acting job.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to hear another voicemail, and this is now from Nick Tiffany.
What's going on, Dakota? This is Nick Tiffany from NT Movie Reviews, calling to let you know that Godzilla -1 is undoubtedly the best film of 2023. Director, writer, and VFX supervisor Takashi Yamazaki, on a fraction of a Hollywood budget, less than $20 million, goes back to Toho and Godzilla's roots, to a story that takes place after World War II, where people in this place are rebuilding, they're looking for hope. This is an ensemble cast who is so immensely enjoyable, so dedicated in their craft. They will make you cry, they will make you laugh. This is a human story through and through, and when Godzilla shows up, he is absolutely terrifying. You have never seen power at this scale, and it makes you all the more concerned for these human characters that we really do grow to care for. This film is full of soaring and sweeping cinematic moments that will make you cheer, it will make you cry. I've seen this film 8 times in theaters. It is undoubtedly the best film of 2023.
Godzilla -1 was one that just missed my cut. I really love that movie.
I thought it was fun. I had a good time with that movie. I don't know if it would, probably if we had top 20s, I think it would have been in there.
Yeah. If I would say this is probably my favorite all-time Godzilla movie too.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, really.
I really liked Godzilla versus Kong though, the last one.
Yeah. I know you just saw. I'm seeing it. By the time this comes out, I will have seen it. But I'm seeing it in a couple days.
Oh, enjoy! It's kind of stupid, but it's fine.
All right, so I'm going to go to my number 8 film, and that is David Fincher's The Killer. This is the Netflix release that he had, and a lot of people really only liked the opening sequence, the opening chapter of him with the pointing the sniper across the street in France, and things go wrong. I think it's in France that happened. But I really love the whole movie, and like a lot of people thought there was too much narration, and I was like, nah, this is fantastic. The whole movie works because of the narration. Like, this was a straight up comedy, and I think people just were not understanding that you're supposed to be laughing at it. And you have this character who says so much, and this is the ethos, and this is what he has to live by, and his creed. And then you watch him, and he just basically does everything the complete opposite. He talks about being a professional. He's not a professional. He is professional in name because, you know, he makes a lot of money and he kills a lot of people and earns the money killing people, but not a professional in the sense of comparing him to other assassin types. I love this movie. I loved how ingenious some of his hacks and workarounds were. I thought his fight with the Brute was one of the best fight sequences I've ever seen. I wish it was a little brighter. David, you gotta up the contrast a little bit there. His one scene with Tilda Swinton was incredible. I know she made your list as far as best supporting actresses go in our blog post that we did of if we were Oscar voters. All around, like, I just really loved it. And, you know, there's the scene with the nail gun. I'm not going to explain too much about it, but that might have been one of the most, like, stomach churning scenes I've ever witnessed, where I'm just like, oh God. Where I was very happy when that moment ended, because that was a lot for me to handle. I know you're a big fan of this movie too, though.
Loved it. This is my number 11. Like, this, I really debated with putting this one in, but, I don't know. I feel like every year I always need to put like one movie that is not. I don't know why. I mean, okay, I don't feel like I have to put like a Creed type movie in, but I really enjoyed Creed. I really enjoyed The Killer, but for very different reasons, obviously. But I love The Killer. To me, it's like I agree with you. It's a comedy, but it's like a noir comedy, and it just hits all these points. And I agree. Make it brighter. Make it brighter. I think he needs Deacons back or something, because like they got to make it a bit brighter. That scene with Tilda Swinton, it really did disappoint me that she didn't get more or any really attention for that in terms of awards, because I think it's a short scene, but to me that doesn't matter. I don't think that that's ever mattered for supporting awards. And I know awards aren't the be all and end all of anything, but I just thought she was so good in it, and everything about the movie just really worked for me. And I showed it to I told my brother to watch it, because I know he really likes David Fincher movies. And so I told him to watch it, and he watched it like multiple times. He just had it on all the time. Like that one weekend I told him to watch it. Nice. And then he still goes back and watches it a lot. Like he really, really loved that movie.
I watched it twice in like less than a 2-week span, which, you know, coming from me, that is crazy.
That's big.
Yeah, because I watched it on my own and I loved it. And my wife was away, and then she came back home, and our mother-in-law was staying with us. And I was like, hey, we should watch The Killer. And they both absolutely loved it. And a bit of a hot take here. I don't know, maybe not a hot take. I think this is one of Fincher's best films. I'm trying to find my rankings of where I put it, but like, it's probably like number 3 or number 4 for me. I have it at number 3 behind The Social Network and Zodiac.
We need to wait. I'm sorry. What? What's your ranking of? Well, let's interrupt this for a David Fincher segue here. What is your ranking for Fincher?
Number 1, The Social Network. Number 2, Zodiac. Number 3, The Killer.
Where does 7 lie in this?
4.
Damn. 7 is my favorite Fincher movie. I think it's my favorite. I think his best movie, though, is probably The Social Network.
Yeah.
I'd find it difficult to argue that that's not his best movie, but my favorite is 7 by far. I love that movie so much. Let's see, what else is there? Zodiac would be up there for me. Panic Room, I think, is a very underrated Fincher movie. I don't think people give Panic Room enough love.
I like it a lot. I don't love it, but I like it a lot.
I would put Killer in maybe. I could fit it into the 5. I'd put it into the top 5.
That's fair.
I think. Because I like 7, Panic Room, Fight Club, Zodiac, Social Network. I think I like those all better than I like The Killer.
That's fair.
Yeah.
At least you're not one of the insane people that has The Game or Alien 3 at the top.
Those are just contrarians. And they
I don't get them.
No mind should be paid to contrarians.
All right. What's the next film on your list there, Rachel?
My number 7 is a Finnish movie called Fallen Leaves, which was nominated for... Was it nominated? No, it wasn't. It was shortlisted.
It missed the cut.
It was only shortlisted, which is very disappointing. It is, speaking of like films that don't appear to be comedies, but actually are comedies, Fallen Leaves is one of the funniest movies that I've seen in a really long time. And I can't pronounce this director's name. It is Aki
Kaurismäki.
Kaurismäki? Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to go Kaurismäki, but Kaurismäki. He has a kind of trilogy of sorts, or like a series of films where he just looks at everyday life in Finland, like just kind of very straight, typical, nothing extraordinary happens in these films. And it's just following kind of working people of the country. And Fallen Leaves is about like two single people who kind of find their way to each other, but don't really find their way to each other at the same time. They're super awkward with one another. They really like their isolation, but don't at the same time. And the thing there's everything about this movie works for me. I love like mood and atmosphere in films. And I love that in this one, you could not pinpoint a time. Like, whereas contrasting to The Holdovers, which is such a beautiful depiction of the 70s, Fallen Leaves, it doesn't fit into one time period. They have little notes and little buttons in the set deck of, the 20s, the 40s, and then present day as well. And I found that fascinating. It's one of these movies that I've watched a lot, and I've put it in the background because I think it's a nice, like, vibey background movie. But I think that this is an incredible film, and I actually would have nominated this over The Taste of Things, which...
Well, The Taste of Things also didn't get nominated. So that's
I thought it did.
No.
Oh.
That was the big controversy, is that France submitted The Taste of Things, but the Academy didn't even end up choosing it.
Oh, that is right. I did write a whole thing about that. Never mind. Now I need to remind myself what was even nominated for it. Did you watch Fallen Leaves though?
I absolutely adored it. It was my number 11 film. It killed me not to include it in my top 10. So it was there for the longest time. It only got pushed out by my next pick. I'm not going to reveal that yet, but it killed me. Yeah, it was the movies that got nominated this year were The Zone of Interest, Io Capitano, Perfect Days, Society of the Snow, and The Teacher's Lounge. I would have loved it. I'm very
comfortable kicking out Society of the Snow. I'm happy.
I would have been fine with that. I also would have been very comfortable kicking out Io Capitano.
I like that movie. I thought it was good.
We talked about it in our if we were Oscar voters category, where I said it was easily one of the most stacked years for international film.
Yeah. Yes, very much so. Very, very much so. But yeah, I loved Fallen Leaves. I think it's everything about it was working for me. It's a very my kind of film.
It sort of is like a cross between like Yorgos Lanthimos and Wes Anderson as far as the like stilted acting and like weird humor.
I'll give the Yorgos
thing. Fine. But it's still very much
slander and sully my movie, my number 7 pick with this Wes Anderson nonsense. But no, I know what you mean. Like, it does have that, because it's so funny, like that awkwardness in actors. It's such a difficult thing to do convincingly. And it makes me wonder if like maybe they're just awkward people. But then I've seen interviews with both of them, and they are not awkward.
They're not.
They're
especially the actress. She's so lovely.
Yeah. They're so charismatic. I'm like, oh my god. Okay, never mind.
Yeah,
but yeah, I did.
That was my first Kaurismäki, and I really need to watch more.
I've seen one other of his, and then I meant to watch. I think I saw Factory Girl. I think that's what it's called. And then there's a third one in that series of films that I haven't seen yet, and I really should go watch it.
Mm-hmm. All right, so my number 7 film, the one that unfortunately kicked out Fallen Leaves from my top 10, is The Iron Claw, directed by Sean Durkin. I was excited about this movie, and I cannot believe how much this movie emotionally wrecked me. Like, I don't like wrestling at all, have never cared for it. And so, when I heard it was coming out, it was pretty easy for me to not know what was going on. Because a lot of people, as soon as they're like, oh, they're making a movie about the Von Erich family, know how that's going to end. And I'm like, I don't. And I'm kind of glad I don't. And so I did my best to avoid researching it all. And the only thing I knew is I was like, yep, this is going to be a very sad and tragic movie. And sure enough, yes, it was. But I was not prepared for just how great Zac Efron was as an actor. And he kind of does the thing that I really like, I'll call it like the Jessica Chastain in Zero Dark 30, where you're so reserved and so pent up and you don't let anything out. And then the very last scene, you have this moment of catharsis where you kind of let everything out, all the emotions come out. And he pulls it off spectacularly, where I kind of expect that was going to happen, but I did not expect for him to be able to deliver what was accurately needed for this character to kind of finally have that release and that catharsis. And the whole supporting cast was absolutely excellent. Jeremy Allen White, Harris Dickinson, Holt McCallany, Moira Tierney, Lily James. I thought everyone was very, very excellent. I was super impressed with it overall.
This is a movie that A24 really frustrates me with this type of movie, not in terms of releasing it, but how they released it and how they go about their awards campaigning. Again, I know that awards aren't the end of the world or aren't all the entire world, but look at what happened with Zone of Interest after it got nominated for all these things. People went out and saw it, and it was like a lot of people who don't even care that much about films were asking me about Zone of Interest. So I was like, so clearly there is a way to get these types of films out there. Whereas a film that is about something I didn't know much about or anything about. I'm like you. I didn't know anything about the Von Erlich family. I don't really watch wrestling. Not now, especially like when I was younger, maybe a little bit with my brother. But it was not a story I was familiar with. But I know a lot of people are very, very familiar with it. And you have an actor who is very well known. He has a name in Hollywood. So the idea that it got very much lost in the shuffle of award season, and that late December, I think it got released in late December.
Yep.
It just frustrates me that they couldn't do more with this, because I think the film was very deserving of a lot more attention, not just from awards bodies, but just people going out and watching it. This movie, I think, turned my mind on Zac Efron. I don't think I've ever seen Zac Efron in a movie before. I've never watched any of his things, but really? I never watched any of those High School Musical ones. I think he did some comedy stuff, didn't he? With like Seth Rogen and some other things. I just never got around to watching anything that he was in, but I know who he is, obviously. And I have certain ideas about who he is. And when I watched Ironclaw, I was like, oh shit, like he's actually a really, really good actor. But then funny enough, I watched Ricky Stenicki recently, and I don't think it was intended for that to come out after Ironclaw, but you watch it and you go, what are you doing, Zac Efron? Don't do movies like this anymore. Like he could be doing just the most prestige kind of type films that you want, but I found it very frustrating with A24, the way that they released that movie, because I think it deserved a lot better. It deserved a lot more attention than it got.
Yeah, it was frustrating because it didn't play any festivals, so it didn't get that buzz for 6 months before it comes out. Like, I was just talking about Evil Does Not Exist. That's been slowly building up buzz because it did the festival circuit last year. Now it's finally coming out, wide release. And it came out so late in the year. It was caught in the shuffle of all the other year-end releases that did have buzz as well. And A24 had like 4 other movies that they were trying to figure out what's going to be our awards player here, which ironically ended up being The Zone of Interest was their big awards player. But they had quite a few films that they were trying to position for, Oscar success. And this one just unfortunately got lost in the shuffle. They considered pushing it back, and they really should have.
I think they should have
made it like a Sundance film this year or a South by Southwest film this year, and allow the momentum from there to carry over. But on your opinion of Zac Efron as an actor, looking at Letterboxd, I've seen 9 of his movies, and I think he's really good at the comedy. He's good at playing, the dumb idiot, handsome jock guy. And you look at his actual dramatic work, I think this is a bit of an anomaly, because I think he really needs the perfect script with the perfect director who knows exactly what to ask of him and how much, because I still don't think he's a great actor. He was my pick for best actor last year, but I don't know if there's going to be another, Iron Claw-like performance from him in the future. Maybe one more 10 years from now, something like that. I don't know, but I don't think this is going to be a regular occurrence.
That's a shame. I wonder, I find for some of these actors, I've heard Chris Evans talk about this actually. It was like early in his career, his publicist and his agent, they worked towards making him a movie star versus any like an actual actor. Like they're like, just be a movie star. And that's the trajectory, and you can see it in the roles that he chose early in his career. And like, I love Chris Evans. I don't think he's the strongest actor in the world though, but it's only later on in his life that he was able to, or in his career rather, that he got a few more serious things. But it's hard to shake that image at the beginning. And I think Zac Efron, especially because he started so young as well, he was like a teenager. I think he's my age too, actually. I think he started off like in the teenage stuff, in the Disney things. And
yeah,
I don't know if like he had a very, it's a tough thing to change that perception. And Iron Claw is 100% the thing that could do it. I think he could. I actually think if he had a good agent and he has a good eye for scripts, I think that hopefully something like Iron Claw can give, like, they could at least show it to other directors and be like, look, like he could do this if somebody just gave him the opportunity. So I know what you mean by like, he might not get another shot at this, but I really hope he does. Because I think it'd be such I don't want to say a waste, but kind of a waste if all he's ever remembered for when he decides to stop acting is like the High School Musical things. Yeah, like I think that's such a shame because there's clearly something else there that can be tapped into. And, you know, and I thought he was great. I think he was so good in Iron Claw. Everybody else in that film, I expect that of them. Like I expect great performances from the rest of the ensemble. But for him, I wasn't expecting that in the slightest. Who's the guy that played the I made a discovery about this movie not that long ago. The guy who played David Von Erich, Harris Dickinson. He was from
Triangle of Sadness.
Had no idea. I only discovered this like last week. I was looking something up about Iron Claw and I was like, but no, this is a testament to Harris Dickinson that he did so well. And like, I genuinely didn't realize it was the same person. Good for him. Good job, Harris.
Oh boy. All right. What is your number 6 pick, Rachel?
My number 6 is American Fiction. I watched this at where did I watch this? Windsor International Film Festival. And, funny enough, this was a really big get for that festival, which is a bit of a smaller festival. And I hope it's okay to share this, but the festival director told me that the reason that they got it, because it was such a big film to come out at such a tiny little festival, was because he was one of the only people at the very first press screening for American Fiction at TIFF. And he came out of it and talked to I think it's Warner Brothers, talked to them. Is it Warner Brothers? I can't remember.
I don't know.
Maybe not. Sorry. Whoever the distributor for it was, talked to them about it and was just raving about it. And because he was literally one of the very only, I think there were only like a handful of press members who went to go watch American Fiction in the very, very first press screening. And then of course it blows up and you can't get a seat to any of the screenings afterwards at TIFF. But I watched it after hearing all the buzz about it at TIFF and hearing that it was just this really interesting movie, a really great movie. I didn't know much, but I didn't read the film, or I didn't read the book about that it's based on, but I could not have enjoyed this movie more. I thought it was so interesting the way that they went about the subject matter, about, you know, pigeonholing and stereotyping actors, or not just actors, sorry, artists within their kind of racial stereotypes and prejudices. But the thing I found the most appealing about this movie was when you walk away from it, because it is funny. There is a lot of humorous moments in it. The ending of the movie, though, is incredibly tragic, and it's incredibly sad when you really think about it. Yet, when you walk away from the movie, you feel really light. You feel very like you just watched a comedy, even though the ending is actually really pessimistic and really, it's very, very downtrodden. And I found that such a unique feeling to come away from a movie from, like knowing that you felt light, but knowing that what you watched was not light in the slightest. And I really like Jeffrey Wright in it. I thought Sterling K. Brown was amazing. And I thought I was very happy when I saw he got nominated for supporting actor at the Oscars. Cause I thought, yeah. And Tracy Ellis Ross was very, very good in it too, but she's not in it for very long. Would you watch this one?
I did.
You didn't like it because you're racist. No, I'm kidding. What?
I just, my issue was I really enjoyed both aspects of it, the literary satire and the family drama. And unfortunately, because they tried to do both, I thought both ended up failing.
Interesting.
Neither got the, like, I would have watched a full movie version of either one and probably would have made my top 10. But the fact that they, you know, are trying to combine these two genres together, that's where it ended up losing me, because I kept, every time we'd be in a scene, I'm like, great, let's keep going with this. And then they switch. I'd be like, oh, okay, I'm now missing the other side of it. So I was very frustrated in that regard. So in the end, it just did not work for me. That said, I did.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah, which I think is a pretty common criticism for people that didn't care for it, where I feel like everyone's like, yeah, I really enjoyed the performances. You know, it was really funny. There's some really insightful stuff going on and all that sort of stuff. But in the end, I think the fact that it was too much of both and not enough of either or kind of in the end hurt it. But I'm glad it worked for you. And I agree with you on Tracee Ellis Ross. I was watching this movie and it was, I believe it was after the Oscar nominations had come out. And so Sterling K. Brown, I knew was nominated, and of course Jeffrey Wright. And I'm watching, you know, the beginning of it, and I'm like, Tracee Ellis Ross is incredible. How is she not nominated for supporting actor? Oh, and she's done in the movie. Okay, all right, never mind. But still, I thought she had just as much of an impact as Sterling K. Brown did, who, frankly, I didn't think should have been nominated for an Oscar. I don't think he had enough to do and didn't have enough of a moment for me. I thought he was good and he was enjoyable and he was funny and he was lively, but I didn't think he brought enough to earn the Oscar nomination in my sense. I thought it was still good, just not
Who
Oscar
would you
worthy.
have put instead?
I mean, I don't know, 20 other people.
Really? Oh, I thought he was
I'm gonna pull up.
I loved him.
I'm pulling up our article that we did, and I'm gonna look it up.
No, I really like Sterling K. Brown. I think that he was. I don't think he's anything I've ever seen him in, actually. I'm always really taken aback how good he is, because I feel like he's oftentimes, not that he's kind of cast aside. I don't think he's cast aside, but I think a lot of times he's not the main person, right? Like, he's not the main, but anything that I've ever seen him in, I'm always really floored with him. Him and Regina Hall did a really funny movie a few years ago.
I know you love that one.
I love that one, yeah.
Yeah, according to my list, I had Glenn Howerton at number 1, and then I had Charles Melton in there as well. The other 3 were the actual Oscar nominees. So Melton, I feel, probably had a chance. Glenn Howerton, I don't know if he had a chance to get nominated.
He did not,
but
I don't think.
Yeah.
Which is a shame, because he should have been.
Yeah. All right, so now we're going to move on. We're going to hear another voicemail, this time from Ethan Simmie.
Hi, my name is Ethan Simmie, and I'm the host of 24 Minutes of A24 and the Movie Draft podcast. And my favorite movie of 2023 was Oppenheimer. The film presents such a multifaceted, ever-revealing narrative surrounding one of the biggest questions of morality that humanity has ever faced. Should we play God? Do we deserve to play God? The score, the editing, the narrative structure, the cast, and everything in between encompasses this journey into a deep, dark understanding of humanity's core. And it's done on a level that I've never seen done in a movie before. It is truly one of the greatest films of the last decade and possibly ever. And that is why Oppenheimer is my favorite movie of 2023.
So that transitions very nicely into my number 6 pick, which is Oppenheimer, which, you know, maybe is a bit blasphemous that it's so low on my list. I'm doing air quotes right now. No one can see that. Number 6 is not low on a list. I know a lot of people do have it higher. But yeah, I absolutely adore this movie. This is incredible. This is, you know, Christopher Nolan's crowning achievement, coming together all at the right time, all the right pieces, the right script, the right story, the right performances, his style working very nicely of, you know, the non-linear storytelling, the black and white cinematography versus the color cinematography all tells a story. I love this movie. And the fact that he managed to cast like 100 big name people, and it doesn't feel like it's weighing it down. It doesn't feel like stunt casting. It doesn't, none of that stuff like was any sort of of a hindrance for it. And the fact that I could say that someone that I went to high school with, Devin Bostick, is now in a Best Picture winning film is definitely pretty cool to say.
I am a big fan of Oppenheimer. Yeah. I think the casting is... That to me is what I don't like. Anytime people talk about, they're introducing the new, what's the word am I looking for? The new award for, what is it going to be called? For casting directors, I think it's going to be.
It'll be called Best Casting, but it will be given to the casting
directors, right? Yeah. I mean, this movie couldn't have been cast more perfect, right? Like, even in roles that maybe didn't require such a name brand, it didn't matter. Like, that's the thing I like about Chris Nolan, is like, it doesn't matter. He just goes for the person, like the best person for the role. And like, you think of Jason Clarke, that role, you could have given it to a more name brand actor and then trade off with one of the smaller roles, like what was that, Rami Malek's role, for example. It's such a small little thing, but and they could have put like a lesser known actor in there. But like, Chris Nolan just does it. Him and his casting director, like, they find the perfect people for the role. And I think that makes Oppenheimer, I mean, it was the best picture of the year, according to the Academy, and many other people, I should say, not just according to the Academy.
Yeah. I got to push back on the criticism of, like, he's carried this through his whole career, that he doesn't have great female parts, and I really got to argue against it. I really thought both Emily Blunt and Florence Pugh were excellent in this film, and I thought they had great arcs as well too. They really served the story well. So I got to push back on that criticism against him, and one that I think, frankly, is pretty unearned. Like, for the longest time, Nolan movies had the criticism of, oh, his movies are too cold, they're not emotional. I'm like, what are you talking about? His movies are incredibly emotional. Just because you're not on the same emotional wavelength that he is doesn't mean they're not emotional stories. And I got to push back once again on the story about his writing female characters and the female performances that are given in his films.
I'll say I understand those criticisms about Chris Nolan, because I think you're naming Emily Blunt and Florence Pugh in this movie, because he has received that criticism up until, like, this movie was kind of like, not saying that he did it on purpose, but like, it's in response to it, right? Like, you're watching, this is a movie that came out after those criticisms were levied against him. I do think his films tend to be more male dominated. They're more male focused. That's just how it is. But I'll say, he's a guy. Like, he's just a white guy. So why would we expect him to? You write and make movies about what you know. You know, I'm one movie neither of us put on our list, but Killers of the Flower Moon. Like, a lot of people said, why didn't Scorsese take the perspective of the indigenous people? But it's like, that's not his movie to tell. How could he, this guy, this, you know, Italian American from New York, possibly begin to say that? And I'm not saying you can't do or write films that are outside of your experience, but I don't think that it's something that we should expect either of people. So when people say that about Chris Nolan, I think his female roles that he has written before Oppenheimer, I think they've been good. I don't think that they, like, you look at Interstellar, which is not one of my favorite movies of his, but he writes good. Not Oppenheimer. What's the Inception? Marion Cotillard, that's an incredible role, right? But I don't think there is any denying that his films tend to be more male-dominated, male-skewed from the male perspective. But he is a male director, so I kind of don't really understand. Not that I don't understand that criticism, but to me, it's a bit unfair to say that. In terms of his films being cold, I agree with you. I don't think that his films are cold. I think that they can be very, maybe cold in the sense that they're not like touchy-feely in what we see in other films. But I do think that there is always an emotional beat throughout his films that rides through any one of his movies. I would say has a great amount of emotion in it, but maybe not the outpouring of emotion that more people are looking for, like the more obvious emotion, I suppose.
Yeah.